I bought the cabin for silence, not the kind people post about, with candles and soft music, but the kind that doesn't ask anything from you, the kind that doesn't assume you will give more just because you always have. I posted one photo, just one. A pale morning sky and the edge of a wooden deck. No faces, no address. The caption was simple. Quiet isn't empty. It's earned. This is a story created by the author of the Revenge Amber channel for educational and inspirational purposes, and it does not portray any specific real-life individual. 10 minutes later, my phone began to vibrate across the kitchen counter. The family group chat, the one that usually slept for weeks at a time, was suddenly alive. My mother was first. That looks peaceful. Sweetheart. Where is this? An aunt followed. Is that in the mountains? It's beautiful. Then my father. You didn't mention you were buying property. I didn't answer right away. I was still standing in the cabin, keys in my hand, letting the quiet settle into my bones. I told myself I didn't owe explanations anymore. That was the whole point. My brother Caleb broke the pause. Wow, that place is huge. Mary Beth is going to love that view. I typed slowly. It's small, and it's mine. My mother responded almost instantly. Oh, Abby, of course it's yours. We're just saying how perfect this timing is. Perfect. That word always came right before a decision was made without me. My phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. This time, I answered. Abigail, my father said, already using the tone he saved for church meetings and negotiations. Your mother is a little surprised. I didn't plan to surprise anyone. I said, I planned to rest. There was a pause. Then my mother's voice slid in, gentle and practiced. Caleb and Mary Beth's lease ends in December. You know that. That's not my problem. I said. The words felt unfamiliar in my mouth. Well, she continued, still calm. It doesn't have to be a problem. It's a solution. Christmas at your place makes sense. We'll bring groceries. I'm not hosting Christmas. I said. Another pause. This one heavier. My father cleared his throat. You're being difficult. No, I said. I'm being clear. Family doesn't work this way, my mother said softly. We don't shut each other out. I'm not shutting anyone out, I said. I'm choosing not to be absorbed. Caleb laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. You don't even use it full time. Why are you acting like this is a boundary issue? Because it always was. Because every inch of my life had been treated like shared space. I'm hanging up, I said. We can talk later. Abby, my father warned. Don't do this. I ended the call. The quiet rushed back in. Not fragile, not lonely, solid. If this story feels familiar, if you've ever been told that your peace was selfish, stay with me. What came next didn't start with shouting. It started with smiles, assumptions, and the sound of people deciding my life without asking. In our family, conflict never arrived loudly. It wore perfume. It asked about your day before rearranging your life. Growing up in Greenville, everyone knew the Lawsons. My father, William Lawson, stood near the front pew every Sunday, shoulders back, voice steady when he read announcements. My mother, Patricia, smiled like kindness was a discipline she had mastered. People trusted them. That trust was their shield. At home, the rules were unspoken but precise. Caleb learned early that wanting something out loud worked. I'm just trying to figure things out, he would say. Whenever a job fell apart, my mother would nod. He's sensitive. He needs support. When I did well, it was treated like gravity. Expected. You've always been capable, my father told me once, after I was promoted. That's your strength. It wasn't praise. It was a sentence. At holidays, Caleb arrived empty-handed and left with envelopes. I arrived with plans and left with dishes. If I looked tired, my mother would touch my arm and say, You don't have to prove anything to us. Abby. What she meant was I didn't get credit for the effort. One Christmas, after Caleb announced he was quitting another job, my father turned to me at the table. You understand responsibility? He said. That's why we don't worry about you. Everyone nodded, including me. I learned how to agree before I learned how to resist. The first time I tried to push back was small. I was 24, exhausted from work, and I told my mother I wasn't coming home for Thanksgiving. There was silence on the line. Then her voice softened. Oh, I didn't realize you were struggling. I'm not struggling, I said. I'm just tired. Well, she replied, we just worry when you isolate yourself. By the time we hung up, I had apologized for something I hadn't done and booked a ticket I couldn't afford. That was the Lawson way. Concern as control, politeness as pressure. My grandmother Evelyn saw it clearly. She once pulled me aside after church, her grip stronger than it looked. They mistake your strength for permission, she said. Don't let them. I laughed then. I wasn't ready to hear it. Years later, standing alone in my cabin with my phone face down on the counter, her words came back sharp and uninvited. My family wasn't reacting to the house. They were reacting to the shift. I had made a decision that didn't root through them first. In the Lawson family, independence was fine. Autonomy was not. And I had just crossed a line they believed belonged to them. The bonus came on a Friday afternoon, slid across a polished conference table like it was nothing more than paperwork. My supervisor didn't smile. He never did. You held the transition together, he said. Most people would have broken. Inside the envelope was a check for $72,400. I stared at it long enough that he cleared his throat. You earned it, he added, almost defensively. Use it well. I thanked him, folded the envelope, and walked out without calling anyone. That part was new. There was a time when my first instinct would have been to tell my parents, to offer the news like proof I was still worthy of belonging. Instead, I drove home and sat in my car until the engine cooled. I called my grandmother Evelyn that night. Well, she said after I told her, it's about time someone paid you for doing the impossible. I laughed, a short sound that surprised me. I didn't tell Mom and Dad. Good, she replied. They'd just tell you how to spend it. I was thinking about buying something, I said carefully. There was a pause, not the heavy kind my mother used. A waiting pause. Something that doesn't ask your permission to exist, Evelyn said. It wasn't a question. I didn't answer, but she didn't need me to. Listen to me. Abby, she continued. Don't turn this into a family meeting. Don't soften it. Don't explain it. Do it clean. That word stayed with me. Clean. I spent the next week moving quietly. I transferred the bonus, added what I had saved over years of careful restraint, and spoke to a lawyer I found through work, someone who didn't know my parents' names. We'll put it under an LLC, she said, practical and unimpressed. Keeps things simple. Simple was not how my family lived. That alone felt like a rebellion. When I signed the documents for Blue Ridge Haven LLC, my hand didn't shake. That surprised me too. I found the cabin on a Tuesday night, after midnight, scrolling without intention. 2 bedrooms, modest, isolated enough to breathe, close enough to drive without explaining myself. I didn't ask anyone if it made sense. At the closing, the agent congratulated me. Your first property. My first quiet decision, I said, and she smiled like she didn't quite understand. When the keys hit my palm, something loosened in my chest. Not excitement. Relief. I didn't celebrate. I didn't announce it. I didn't frame it as a milestone. I bought the cabin the same way I had learned to survive in my family. Carefully, silently, without permission. And for the first time, that silence belonged to me. I didn't tell my family when I started changing the locks. The locksmith asked, You want the same code for everyone in the household. There's only me, I said. He nodded, typed, then hesitated. You sure you don't want a backup contact? No, I said. I'm sure. Each decision felt small on its own. A camera by the door, mail routed to a private box in town, utility accounts under the LLC name, none of it dramatic, none of it emotional, just layers. When my friend Lena came up for the weekend, she looked around at the bare living room and laughed. "So this is where you disappeared to?" "I didn't disappear," I said. "I relocated." She raised an eyebrow. "Your mom knows no." "Wow," she said softly. "That's new." We sat on the floor eating takeout from cardboard containers because I hadn't bought a table yet. Lena watched me unpack a box of dishes like it was a performance. "You're not rushing," she said. "You usually rush. I'm not building this for approval," I replied. She didn't argue. She just nodded, like she was taking notes. The next morning, our neighbor Tom stopped by, mid-50s, friendly without being curious. "Just wanted to say welcome," he said. "We don't get many new faces who plan to stay." "Neither do I said. He smiled, then glanced at the empty driveway. "Family coming up for the holidays." I felt the question land. I kept my voice even. "No." Tom accepted that answer immediately. No follow-up, no concern. The relief surprised me. That night, Lena sat on the couch, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. "You're different here," she said. "Am I quieter?" "No," she replied. "You're louder, just without noise." When she left the next day, she hugged me longer than usual. "Whatever happens," she said, "don't let them convince you this place isn't yours." After she drove off, the house settled again. Not empty, waiting. I walked from room to room, tightening a screw, adjusting a shelf, learning where things belonged. For the first time, every decision stayed where I put it. Nothing shifted overnight. Nothing was quietly reassigned. The cabin didn't ask me who else needed it. It didn't assume I would share myself thin. It held exactly what I brought into it. And when the quiet returned, it stayed. The first sign wasn't a phone call. It was a post. I was halfway through a workday meeting when my phone lit up with a notification from Facebook. I rarely checked it anymore, but my mother's name pulled my attention like a reflex I hadn't fully unlearned. "So grateful our children have found a peaceful mountain retreat," Patricia Lawson had written. "Such a blessing for this season." The comments were already stacking. "How wonderful! Perfect place for Christmas. Caleb and Mary Beth must be so relieved." I didn't comment. I didn't react. I closed the app and finished my meeting like nothing had happened. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a text. "We'll come up early to decorate. Christmas at your place makes the most sense." No question mark. No pause. I typed back slowly, "I'm not hosting Christmas." The reply came fast. "Abby, don't be dramatic. This solves everything." My phone rang before I could put it down. "Why are you doing this?" my mother asked. "Skipping hello." Her voice was soft, wounded. "Caleb's lease ends right before the holidays." "I know," I said. "That doesn't make it my responsibility." "We're not asking you to fix him," she replied. "We're asking you to support family." "I am not offering my home," I said. "That's not support. That's surrender." There was a breath on the line. Then my father. "You didn't consult us," William said. "I wasn't required to. You bought property without discussing the implications." He continued. "That affects all of us." "It doesn't," I said. "It affects me." He lowered his voice, the way he did when he believed reason would prevail. "You're being selfish." "No," I said. "I'm being specific." Caleb cut in, his tone light, almost amused. "You don't even use the place full time. Why are you acting like this is some sacred boundary?" "Because it is," I said. Mary Beth's voice was quieter, uncertain. "Abby, I didn't realize this would upset you." "It doesn't upset me," I said. "It stops here." My mother sighed. "You're creating distance. I'm creating clarity." Silence stretched. I didn't fill it. We already told people, my father said finally. The church, the family. I didn't authorize that. You don't have to authorize family, he replied. That was it. The line they always crossed without seeing it. I won't be home for Christmas, I said, and no one is staying here. Abigail, my mother said sharply now, the softness gone. You don't get to rewrite how this family works. I already did, I said. I ended the call before they could respond. My hands were steady when I set the phone down. That surprised me. What didn't surprise me was the feeling that followed. The low, quiet understanding that this wasn't over. They hadn't asked. They never did. And they were not used to hearing no. They didn't come at me directly after that. They let other people do it. The first call came from Pastor Reynolds, a man who had known me since I was a teenager. Your mother mentioned you've been under a lot of stress, he said gently. I just wanted to check in. I'm fine, I replied. Well, he continued, choosing his words carefully. Sometimes independence can look like isolation. I didn't answer. Silence had become a language I understood. Later that afternoon, my coworker Jenna stopped by my desk. She hovered, awkward, eyes flicking to the hallway. Everything okay? She asked. Your dad called the office earlier. He said he was worried. He shouldn't have done that. I said. She nodded slowly. I told him you were busy. That night, my mother left a voicemail. We're just trying to help you before things spiral, she said. People are concerned. Concern. That word again. Always sharp around the edges. The next morning, my Aunt Carol texted, Your mom says you've been pushing everyone away. That's not healthy. Abby. I typed back once. Please don't involve yourself. Her reply was instant. We're family. Of course we're involved. By the end of the week, the pattern was clear. No yelling, no threats. Just a quiet erosion of how others saw me. A colleague asked if I needed time off. A neighbor from Greenville messaged to say she was praying for me. Someone forwarded an article about burnout with my name in the subject line. They weren't trying to take the house. They were trying to take my footing. I called my grandmother Evelyn. They're talking around you, she said after I explained. That's how they corner prey without looking cruel. I didn't think they'd reach into my work. I said, They will reach wherever you stand strongest, she replied, because that's where it hurts to fall. That evening, my father finally called again. His voice was calm, almost kind. You don't seem well, he said. We're getting feedback. From who I asked. People who care. He replied, You've always taken on too much. Let us step in. Step in where I said, Your life. He answered, as if it were obvious. You don't have to manage everything alone. I didn't ask for management, I said. I asked for space. There was a pause. Then his voice hardened. Just slightly. If you keep this up, he said, people will start asking questions. They already are. I replied, That's what worries us. No, I said. That's what you're using. He didn't deny it. When the call ended, I sat in the quiet of the cabin and understood something with absolute clarity. This was no longer about a holiday or a house. They were trying to make my independence look like instability, and they would keep going until someone told them to stop. The first letter arrived on a Tuesday. It wasn't threatening. That was the problem. It was addressed to current resident, forwarded to my private box in town. Inside was a flyer from a local utilities office welcoming new occupants and explaining how to add household members. I stared at it longer than I should have. That afternoon, I called the post office. There's been a forwarding request submitted for this address, the clerk said after a pause. 2 names. Which names I asked. She hesitated, then read them. Caleb Lawson and Mary Beth Lawson. That request is invalid, I said. They do not live there. I'll flag it as disputed, she replied carefully. But you may want to put something in writing. By Thursday, there was more. a voicemail from a property management company I had never contacted. "We were told to expect documentation," the man said, "regarding long-term occupancy." I didn't call him back. I called an attorney instead. Caroline Price's office was quiet, efficient. She didn't ask about my feelings. She asked for dates, names, and copies. "This isn't accidental," she said after reviewing the emails and the forwarded notice. "They're trying to establish a pattern of what I asked. Residency," she replied. "Paper first, presents later." On Friday, my father emailed, "We're trying to protect you from unnecessary stress. A temporary arrangement would help everyone." Attached was a document titled Family Occupancy Agreement. It listed my address, Caleb's name, and a language about shared use. My name was typed at the bottom, no signature, no date. I forwarded it to Caroline. "That's not enforceable," she said. "But it's not meant for court. It's meant for clerks, managers, anyone who won't look too closely." "So they're just testing doors?" I said. "Yes," she replied. "And they will keep testing until one opens." That night, my mother called. "We don't understand why you're escalating this," she said. "Your father is just trying to keep things orderly." "This is escalation," I said. "You filed paperwork without my consent." "It's preventative," she insisted. "You've been overwhelmed before." "I'm not overwhelmed now," I said. "Well," she replied, "that's not how it looks." There it was. The sentence meant to bruise without leaving marks. On Sunday, I met Caroline in person. She slid a folder across the table. "No trespass notice," she said. "Administrative fraud alerts, utility account locks. We can stop this. But you need to be clear." "I've been clear," I said. "Clear to them," she replied. "Clear to institutions." I signed. That evening, Caleb texted, "Why are you involving lawyers? This is extreme." I didn't respond. Mary Beth messaged an hour later. "I didn't know about the paperwork. I swear. I typed once, then stopped letting it happen." She didn't reply. By the time the sheriff's office confirmed receipt of the notice, my hands were cold but steady. Every step forward felt like a cut, shallow but precise. Nothing dramatic, nothing explosive, just enough to remind me that paper could hurt as much as fists, and that my family had been drawing blood for years without ever raising their voices. They came 3 days before Christmas. I knew before the camera alert finished loading. 2 cars, familiar shapes, familiar entitlement in the way they parked, as if the space had already been assigned to them. My phone rang. I let it ring. Then my mother's voice came through the door, muffled but unmistakable. "Abby, sweetheart, open up. It's cold." I stood in the kitchen, phone in my hand, watching them on the screen. My father paced. Caleb leaned against his car, arms crossed. Mary Beth hovered near the steps, uncertain. I didn't move. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "We just want to talk. Don't make this a scene." I typed back once. "You were notified. You need to leave." The knock came next, firm, authoritative. "Abigail." My father called. "This is unnecessary." My mother's voice followed, sharper now. "You're hurting people." I opened the camera microphone. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "You've been served a no trespass notice. Please leave the property." Caleb scoffed. "You've lost your mind." Mary Beth turned toward him. "Caleb." He ignored her. "You really called the police on your own family. I called them on people who wouldn't listen." I said. My father stepped closer to the door. "This isn't who you are. It is now." I replied. When the sheriff arrived, the performance changed instantly. My parents straightened. My mother clasped her hands. My father smiled. The officer spoke calmly. "Ma'am, sir, you've been advised to leave this property." My father nodded. "Of course." "We were just checking on our daughter." The sheriff glanced at the notice, then at the cars. "You need to go." Caleb opened his mouth, then shut it when my mother touched his arm. They left without shouting. without tears, just looks. My mother glanced back once, long enough to make sure I saw her disappointment. When the cars disappeared down the road, my legs gave out. I slid to the floor and pressed my forehead against my knees, breathing hard. The quiet came back slowly this time, like it was unsure if it was welcome. An hour later, my phone lit up. Mary Beth, I didn't know they were coming. I'm sorry. I stared at the message. I don't want to live like this. She sent a minute later. I typed back. Then don't. She didn't respond, but the typing bubble appeared and disappeared twice. That night, my father left a voicemail. His voice was cold now, controlled. You've made your position clear. I deleted it without listening to the rest. Outside, nothing celebrated the season. No lights, no music, just stillness. I stood up, locked the door again, and turned off the camera feed. Whatever they had come for, they hadn't taken it with them. And for the first time since I was a child, I didn't feel the urge to explain myself afterward. The first call on New Year's Eve came from my grandmother Evelyn. I heard they showed up. She said, skipping pleasantries, they left. I replied. There was a pause, then a soft exhale. Good. Sit with that. I don't mean tonight, she said. I mean long enough for it to feel real. Later. Mary Beth texted again. I'm staying with my sister for a while. She wrote, I need space from them. I didn't celebrate that. I didn't comfort her either. Take care of yourself. I typed, that part is yours. She replied with a simple, thank you. It felt like the end of something fragile and the beginning of something honest. That evening, my friends arrived with groceries and mismatched bottles of wine. No one asked about my parents. No one asked me to explain what happened. Lena hugged me at the door and said, you look like yourself again. We ate, talked, laughed quietly. At midnight, someone turned on music from a phone. Nothing loud, nothing performative. When the year changed, I didn't make a wish. After they left, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my phone. I went to my emergency contacts. My parents' names sat there out of habit, untouched for years. I removed them. I added Caroline, my lawyer. I added Lena. I added the neighbor who had given me his number just in case. The list was shorter. It felt safer. Before bed, I called Evelyn back. You didn't lose them, she said after I told her. They just don't get to reach you anymore. I know, I said, and this time, I meant it. I stood by the window for a moment, watching the quiet settle again. Not empty. Held. If you've listened this far, if any part of this felt familiar, stay with yourself the way I stayed here tonight. Pay attention to what you protect without announcing it. Notice what changes when you stop explaining. Some stories don't end with forgiveness. They end with clarity. I turned off the lights, locked the door once more, and walked upstairs without checking my phone. The house didn't echo. It didn't ask me to fill it. It kept what I brought into it, and nothing more. And when the new year finally arrived, it arrived without witnesses. That was enough.